Jai Baba. So we all know Merwan Dubash in some way or other, but a couple of lines about him. Merwan, as we all know, is the son of Adi and Rhoda Dubash, and obviously a lot of contact with Meher Baba over the years. And according to what I see here, this is from mehermount.org. And Merwan can talk about himself, but according to what I see here, he's born in 1947 and grew up under the guidance of Baba. And he met Baba for the first time when he was 18 months old. So privileged. And had darshan of Baba several times. Again, he'll speak. And with that said, let's have Merwan share his stories and all that he likes to. Jai Baba Merwan.
Jai Baba
Go
Prakash,
ahead.
thank you for the introduction. Jai Baba, everybody. Nice to be on Baba Zoom. I'm basically really going to tell you stories about my incidents, events that I had when we visited Baba. We were with Baba. And I'm also going to throw in a couple of stories regarding my mom and dad, Adi and Rhoda Dubash. As my dad used to say, and I like saying this, when dad would be asked by anybody about his talks, he says, my talks are all stories. There, he says, intellectual content is zero. It's the same with mine. Mine is all stories, intellectual content is zero. So, I mean, you can ask intellectual questions, but my stories won't have them. As we were talking earlier, I've been in Toronto for a while. Actually, it's been 50 years now I've been in Toronto. But for the first 20 years of my life, I lived in Karachi, which is Pakistan, where they're having this fighting going on right now. I guess it's now stopped. And it was during those first 20 years that the contact with Baba took place. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about how my parents came to Baba, their first contact with Baba. So that'll give you some idea of how long ago it was and, things like that. I'll start with my mother, Rhoda. My mother, Rhoda, came from a Zoroastrian family in Karachi. And at that time in Karachi, the atmosphere in the Zoroastrian community was very anti-Baba. A lot of weird stories going around. He's a fraud, he's this, he's that, very anti-Baba atmosphere. And of course, she grew up in that atmosphere. And she didn't know that my dad, Adi, believed in Baba. Now, in February 1945, they got engaged. And after they were engaged, my dad requested her to accompany his mother, my grandmother, to Bombay because she was going to Bombay for some surgery, medical treatment. Now, my grandmother was going, my dad was going, Rhoda was going, and Minu Kharas. I don't know if some of you know me about Minu Kharas. Now, I'll tell you very briefly about my grandmother and Minu Kharas. My grandmother, her name was Nays, but everybody knew her by her pet name, which was Mummy. Her family, her friends, her relatives, even Baba and his mandli. If you talk to the mandli about Nays, they would look at you with a blank stare. As soon as you said Mummy, they would go, oh yes, we know who that is. So she was known by that name. And I might refer to her as Mummy also often in my talk. And Minu Kharas was a very old family friend. In fact, he was more than a family friend. He was my dad's cousin, but for many years he was raised with the family, and he and my dad were like brothers and had a very close relationship. So the four of them were going to Bombay because my grandmother was going to have surgery. And the day before her surgery, my grandmother was upset and she was shedding a few tears, and Minu and Rhoda were with her at the time. So Minu, trying to console her, says, why are you crying? You should be happy that you are living in the time of the living prophet. When Rhoda heard this, she said, who is this living prophet? And Minu's reply was, Mir Baba. And Rhoda looked absolutely aghast. She said, what? You believe in Mir Baba? Remember, she was brought up in this anti-Baba atmosphere at that time in the community. She says, what? You believe in Mir Baba? So Minu says, yes. And immediately Minu said, yes, all the bells and whistles in her head went off. And she says, does Adi believe in Mir Baba? And Minu said, yes, hasn't he told you? At which point, dear Minu realized that he had let the cat out of the bag big time. Of course, Rhoda was most upset because she and my dad had been going out together for about 6 or 7 years before they got engaged, and she didn't know this. Yeah. So she was waiting for my dad to come. My dad was going to come when visiting us started at 5 o'clock in the evening. So just before 5, she goes to the top of the stairs and she's waiting for him. And as soon as she sees him comes in the door at the bottom, she starts shouting. She says, Adi, she was really upset. She says, Adi, do you believe in Meher Baba? Adi, do you believe in Meher Baba? And my dad is trying to sort of do that and calm her down while he's coming up the stairs. And as he comes up the stairs, she grabs his arm and says, Adi, do you believe in Meher Baba? And my dad very calmly says, yes. And she said, all these years we've been going together, and you never told me that you follow Meher Baba. And my dad very innocently looks at her and says, you never asked me. So that night, my mother, Rhoda, says she just couldn't sleep. She cried and was tossing and turning. She didn't know what to do. She said she loved Adi dearly, but she did not want to get involved with this fellow called Meher Baba. She wanted no involvement with him. Eventually, she says she decided that she loves Adi so much that she'll marry him, and she resolved to bring a change of heart in him and take him away from Meher Baba. She was certain, she said, that she could take him away from Baba. Of course, little knowing that that would rebound on her. And in fact, it would be she who would be caught in the divine fisherman's net. So now, whenever Minu and Mummy were together and Rhoda was there, they talked about Baba. And my mother, Rhoda, said, although she was not interested, etiquette demanded in those days that she sit and listen. So she listened. And she found that what she was hearing from them was quite different to the stories she had heard in her childhood from her friends, from others in the community. It was quite different. But she felt she still had no interest. And then after a few months, they got married. And once again, my grandmother, Mummy, had to go to Bombay for medical treatment. My grandmother didn't keep good health, as you can probably realize by now. And in those days, Bombay was the go-to place for medical treatment. The doctors in Karachi, for some reason, I don't know why, weren't up to par. And quite often, if you wanted better treatment, the go-to place was Bombay. So that's where she would go. Now, this time only Mummy and Minu Kharas were going, and my dad asked Rhoda to accompany them. And Dad thought that since Minu is going, this might be a good opportunity for Rhoda to see Baba, because Minu might ask Baba for darshan, and if Baba says yes, then Rhoda will get a chance to see him. Sure enough, When they get to Bombay, Minu writes to Baba and says, Baba, we are here in Bombay and we would like to have your darshan if that's possible. And not only Mummy and I are here, but Mummy's daughter-in-law Rhoda is also here. So we'll bring her as well. And they get a response from Baba saying, okay, come. And it also says, and I quote, bring Rhoda. She is one of us. So on the appointed day, they leave by train from Bombay. And the train was scheduled to get into Bombay at 8 at night, but it was late and didn't reach Nagar till 10 p.m. Now, in those days, Nagar was nothing like it is today. At 10 p.m. at night, I don't even know what transport they could have got. But when they got to the station, they found that Adike Irani, Baba's secretary, or Adi Senior as we used to call him, had come with his car to pick them up. Baba had sent Adi to pick them up. And Rhoda was impressed by that. She said, wow, this Mir Baba, at least he's considerate. He sent somebody to pick us up at the station. So on the way to Mirabad, Adi tells them that Adi Senior, Adi K. Irani, he tells them that Baba said that if the train is on time, then you bring them up to Upper Mirabad, because Baba would spend the night those days in Upper Mirabad in his tin cabin, Baba's cabin up near the Samadhi. And if the train is late, then you take them straight to Lower Mirabad, because that's where the arrangements were made for them to spend the night. So he says, since you're now late and it's 10 o'clock, I'm taking you straight to Lower Mirabad and you'll see Baba tomorrow morning. So they get to Lower Mirabad. Of course, they get out of the car and the other Mandli come and meet Minu and Mummy because they know them. And Rhoda's introduced to them. And my mom is standing there while the others are catching up with the Mandli. And all of a sudden, one of the Mandli points to the hill and says, Baba's coming, Baba's coming. In those days, for those of you who've been to Mirabad, today between the main road and Mandli Hall and the Dharamshala building, there's all these shrubs and trees and all this growth. In those days, it was absolutely barren. There was nothing there. So you could see straight up the hill. And it was pitch dark in those days. No lights, nothing, no electricity, no power, nothing. So when somebody came down the hill, they would come carrying a lantern. And you could see that somebody was carrying a lantern and Baba was walking with that person down the hill. So Baba comes. My mom, Rhoda, says that's the first time she saw Baba. And she says she was so taken by him that she just couldn't take her eyes off him. She just kept looking at him. So with Baba was also Pilamai, who was one of the women Mandli. Now Pilamai, Baba used to refer to her as his spiritual sister. But Pilamai was originally from Karachi, and my mother's family knew her. So mom knew her. So mom says she now sees a familiar face there, and that made her a little more comfortable that there was somebody there that she knew. So Baba says, come on now, we'll take you to your quarters. And he sent off Minu with the men to sleep with the men, and he took the two women with Pilamai to a room at the side of the old Dharamsala buildings. And Baba goes into the room with them, checks everything, makes sure, the bed is made properly. There's blankets there, drinking water, washing water, everything. Those days was in buckets. There was no running water, no nothing. Lantern there, no lights, nothing. The Baba made sure everything was there. Then he says, okay, now you go and have a nice sleep. And tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, Pila, which is Pilamai, will come and wake you up. And by 6 o'clock, he said, you be ready because at 6 o'clock, we're going to the pictures. So Rhoda says, I'm standing there and I'm thinking, I've come all this way to see this great spiritual master. And the first thing he says is, we're going to the pictures. And he said, not only that, but at 6 o'clock in the morning, we're going to the pictures. She says, anyway, I took it in my stride. So next morning at 6 o'clock, They were ready. Sure enough, on the dot at 6, two buses pulled up in Lower Mehrabad, filled with women. Apparently, they were there just after Mira's birthday. And some women, close women, were invited to celebrate Mira's birthday. So they were living in Upper Mehrabad. So they were also on the buses. And on one bus, one seat, the first seat in the front was left empty for them so that they could sit there. So they were ushered into the bus, and the bus left for Ahmednagar to go to the pictures. So my grandmother turns to Rhoda and says, Baba's sitting 2 seats behind us with Mira. So my mother turns and looks, and she says, once again, she just could not take her eyes off him. And she kept turning and looking. She kept turning and looking. This went on for a little while. But my grandmother, Mummy, was quite a prim and proper lady. So after a while, she sort of nudges Rhoda in the ribs and says, Rhoda, it's rude to stare at people. So behave yourself now. So poor Rhoda, my mom says she had to concentrate and sit tight and not look back at Baba. So they got to the cinema. The cinema was Sarosh Cinema, which is adjoining the trust office. Those of you who've been there know. Of course, it's all now dilapidated and inside is a mess. It hasn't been used, it's run down. But in those days, it was an operating cinema house. And Sarosh was there to show the film. So all the ladies are ushered in. And the film and my mother and mummy were seated reasonably close to Baba. And then the picture starts, and my mom says right through the picture, I just kept looking at Baba. She knew that it was an English picture, English movie, that much she knows. She doesn't know the title of what it was, and she doesn't have a clue what the story was either. She said, all the time, I just kept looking at him. And then when the picture finished, they left. Baba said, go, and they went back to Mirabad. Now, it's rather unusual that Baba sat through the whole picture, because normally the Mandi would tell us, whether it was the men Mandi or women Mandi, that whenever Baba went to the pictures, they would sit in there for half an hour, whatever. And then when Baba's work was done, Baba would say, come on, let's leave. And all of them would leave and go. And Mani would tell stories of when she would go to the pictures with Baba. The story was so engrossing that even while they were walking in the opposite direction, she kept turning and craning her neck, trying to see what was going on. Finally, till the door closed behind us, she said, we would try to see as much of the picture as we could, even though Baba was leaving. But this time he sat through the whole thing. By 10 o'clock, they were back in Mirabad. And they had an early lunch. And then Baba asked one of the women to take them around Mirabad, show things, introduce them to Mera and Mani. So they went to Mera and Mani's room, which is today what we call the East Room in the big retreat building up on the hill. So they did all that. Baba also gave them a little private audience. So they talked to him for a little while, had some tea, and Mom says very quickly it was evening and time to go to the station to catch the train. So they left. Now, Rhoda says that that first meeting left an immense impression on her. And she found that all her previous antagonism against Baba had gone. It had just simply vanished. And this was the beginning of Rhoda becoming his. Although it took quite a few years not till 1952, before she got the conviction that Baba was God in human form. So that's Rhoda's first visit with Baba. Now let me tell you about my dad's first visit with Baba, and a little bit about how he came to him also. My dad, Adi, knew Baba from his school days. through Minu Kharas. Like I said, Minu was brought up like a brother, was very close to them. Now, Minu, as a young man, he was a seeker of God. He would look here and there. He would go to various people, various saints, this, that. Had no luck. In 1932, when he was in Nasik, he heard about Baba and he went to see him. And he saw him in Circle Cinema. You may have heard that name, which was very famous. And Baba used to use Circle Cinema a lot when he was in Nasik in those days, in the 30s. I think it was in 32 he saw Baba. And he says, immediately he saw Baba, he knew that he had found what he was looking for right away, instantly. So then Minu would go regularly to see Baba, and when he would come back, he would come and talk to my grandmother and to dad. Now, they were the only two in my dad's family who were interested in Baba. My dad's father wasn't interested, and my dad's two younger brothers, they really had little interest in Baba. So it was just my grandmother and dad. Although my grandfather had no interest in Baba, he never restricted uh, my grandma from going to Baba. She could go, she was free to go as and when she liked, which she did. So Adi had known Baba since his school days. And somehow or the other, he said, he was following Baba in his own way, whatever that meant. Dad was if you ask dad a question, you got sort of a forward reply, and that was it. He never elaborated. I'm like that too a little bit, but when I'm talking, I do elaborate on a talk like this. Otherwise, I'm a forward answer guy too, normally. And so in 1947, a circular came out saying that Baba would be in Madras, which is today Chennai, known as Chennai. Uh, and he's going to have a 4-day darshan program there. And anybody who wants to meet him or see him can come for 5 minutes on the 3rd of April, 1947, and see him there in Madras. So Minu was quite an ardent Baba lover by then. And any chance he got, he would go to see Baba. And he hadn't seen Baba for a while. So when this came, he decided that he would go. So he tells my dad, he says, Adi, you've been following Baba so many years, but you still haven't met him. So come on, this is a good opportunity. Let's go. So initially, my dad was reluctant because mom was expecting. She was expecting in a month's time. That was me. And he didn't want to leave her alone. But then Rhoda and Mummy and Minu all convinced him that it would be okay to go. My mom was in good health. All her checkups and everything were fine. She says, there's nothing to worry about. There's family there. She had 2 sisters. My dad had 2 brothers and other family. She says, there's so many people here who look after me, and you're only going for a short period. So dad was convinced and he went. The 2 of them, Minu and dad, got to Madras the day before Baba was to arrive. And the next day, when Baba came to Madras by train, they were waiting at the station to meet him. Of course, when Baba came out of the train, my dad said that was the first time he saw him in person. Baba meets Minu, and then Minu introduces my dad to Baba. And Baba tells them that he is going straight from the train to a location in Madras called Saidapet, where there's a darshan program. So come along. So they went with him. And then at the darshan program, my dad said he had his first proper darshan of Baba, bowing down to him, putting his head on his feet and things like that. And then Baba tells them that, why don't you stay for the rest of the program and come every day? And they were only too happy to say yes, and they did. So for the next 4 days, they were with Baba. Wherever Baba went, whatever program he had, they would attend. On the last day that Baba was in Madras, he calls them in the morning and says, "You check out of your rooms, and tonight you sleep with the Mandli. And then tomorrow we'll go on the train together," because they were going to Pune, and Minu and Dad were going to Bombay, which was the next stop. So they did, and my dad said he was sleeping in this room. He was sleeping right up against a wall, and he says on the other side of the wall was Baba's room, and Baba was sleeping there. And he said he was so excited that he hardly slept a wink that night. And the next morning, they accompanied Baba, and they were on the train with him together, and all the way to Pune, where Baba got off. In those days, I think Baba was staying in Mahabaleshwar. And they continued to Mumbai and then back to Karachi. So what was originally supposed to be a 5-minute visit ended up being 5 days with Baba. And my dad would say that until he met Baba, he was very slowly crawling towards him. But after meeting Baba, he said the crawl became a gallop and there was no stopping me. You know, it's ironical that my dad, who had known Baba for so many years, uh, only got to meet Baba after Rhoda. Rhoda met Baba almost immediately. She heard about Baba in 1945. She heard about Baba, and in 1945, she met Baba. My dad had to wait so long, but that's his way. You know, Baba used to tell us that nobody comes to me unless it's their time to come to me. And when their time to come to me appears, either they come to me or I come to them. That's how it works with him. So dad had to wait for whatever reason. So now I'll proceed a little bit with my story, my personal experiences. And it starts in 1947 when I was born. Somehow, Baba seemed to have a hand in all the major events of my life, starting with my birth. Just a few weeks before my birth, you know, my mom would go for regular checkups. She was due in a few weeks now. And just a few weeks before, the doctor surprises her by saying, "You know, Mrs. Dubash, there's a good chance you might have a miscarriage and you might lose your baby." Dad was back from Madras by then. And she was really upset. She said and she was, and when she went home, she said she silently turned to Baba and asked for his help, saying, "Baba, if I so dearly want to have this child, please, please let me have him. And I will dedicate him to you." Mind you, she wasn't a Baba lover then. She respected him and had seen him, but she still wasn't a Baba lover. She wouldn't call herself a Baba lover then, but she still asked for his help. Of course, all turned out well. I'm here, so things were fine. And after, you know, when you have a event like that in in the family, you inform Baba. So Baba was informed by cable, telegram in those days. And a few days after my birth, they got a cable from Baba saying, "My blessings to Rhoda and her child," and it was signed by Baba. Cable was sent from Mahabaleshwar. A week after that cable, a second cable turned up to my parents saying, "Rhoda Adi boy, to be named Merwan. Blessings, Baba." Again from Mahabaleshwar. So they named me Merwan. Dad was most happy about that. He was really pleased. But my mom says she wasn't that pleased with it. She says in those days, the fashion was to give fancy, highfalutin names, you know. And she said, "Mirwan, it's such an old-fashioned name." She said, I didn't like it at the time. But of course, once she became Baba's, she turned. She said she wouldn't exchange it for anything in the world. The next event that happened was as a small child when I was 5 years old, 5 years old. I needed to have an operation. I would run temperature, just random at any time, low temperature, 100, like that. And it got to be so bad that mom would constantly come and keep putting her hand on my temple like that. And soon as I saw her approach, I would run away because I knew she was going to do that. So, and the doctors in Karachi treated me for over a year on this. They, all sorts of medicines, tests. I was even in hospital. They couldn't figure it out. So eventually we decided go to Bombay, our go-to place for doctors. The first doctor that saw me in Bombay, he says, "Oh, he's got chronic tonsils. They have to be removed." Simple as that. And the doctors in Karachi couldn't figure it out for some reason. So of course, now in those days, tonsil operation wasn't that simple as it is today. It was actual surgery. They actually put you under, you had anesthetic, they cut it out, I think, and then you stayed in hospital for I think it was a week or so for recovery and things like that. So before my parents decided, they decided to ask Baba. And Baba's response was that if the doctors agree that surgery is required, then you go ahead and do it. So the doctors did agree. We also got a second opinion, same thing. So my parents had the surgery done. The next event in my life, major event, was my Navjot ceremony. Now, for Zoroastrians, the Navjot ceremony is the initiation of the child into the religion, just like, the bar mitzvah, the holy, the communion for the Catholics and things like that. But my parents knew that Baba didn't like rituals and ceremonies. However, they thought that, we're living here in this Parsi community, which is so anti-Baba. And if Merwan doesn't have his Naujot, not only will he be berated by the community, but so will us. And then this could follow him all his life, and he might have difficulties and this, that, and the other. So they wrote a letter to Baba saying, "Baba, we know you don't like rituals and ceremonies, but for these reasons, we were thinking that maybe we should do Mirwan's Naujot. But Baba, we only will do it if we get your permission." So the response, the letter comes back. Of course, letters were written by Erach. And Erach says, Baba says that you can follow what did he say? The traditions of your religion. And if you want, you can do Mirwan's Naujot. But, he said, if you decide to do the Naujot, Baba gave 3 dates: 16th of April, 19th of April, 11th May. This was in 1956. And he said, you pick one of those days for the Naujot. So they did my Naujot, and if I remember correctly, they selected the 19th. That was the date they selected. Then higher education. Now, of course, I was going to school. And in 1960, when we were with Baba and Guru Prasad, I'll talk about that in my later talks. Sitting in front of Baba, all of a sudden, Baba turns to me and says, have you thought, this was Baba's gesture for thought, thinking, the mind going round. Have you thought about what you want to do after you finish school? I said, yes, Baba. Surprisingly, I knew what I wanted to be. I decided that very early. In 1960, I was 13 years old, and I had 2 years more in school. I finished school at a very early age. I finished at 15. So I knew 2 years before I was finishing, I knew what I wanted to be. So I said, Baba, I want to be a chartered accountant. Chartered accountant is the equivalent of a CPA here in North America. So he says, what do you do? I said, Baba, I have to do my BCom, then an apprenticeship with the accounting firm, and then I have to take professional exams and this and that. So he says, where do you want to do it? I said, Baba, I can do it in Karachi. But my dad pipes up and says, Baba, designation in Karachi is useless. As soon as you leave the country, it's not worth the paper it's on. So it's not portable at all. So Baba says, what other alternatives are there? So again, I'd done the research on this. Surprisingly enough, I don't know why. I guess Baba wanted me to, because he was going to ask me these questions. So I said, Baba, you can do it in the UK or Canada. These are the other two options. So he asked me a bit about it. And then he sort of thinks for a few seconds and he says, okay, you do this. You do your BCom in Karachi. And then after that, you go to the UK and do your CA, your chartered account training there. So that's what I did. And finally, he had a hand in my marriage. Now, my wife Ruby and I didn't get married till 1972, 3 years after Baba dropped his body. But here's how that happened. In 63, again in Guru Prasad, in one of our visits to Guru Prasad, sitting in front of Baba, again he turns to me and says, 63, I was 16 years old. I'm nowhere near marriage age. I have 2 or 3 years of university to go. Then I'm going to do my chartered accountancy. So there's lots of time before I get married. But Baba in 63 asked me, he says, have you thought about getting married? So I was taken aback a little bit at that stage. I didn't even thought of it. Before I could say anything, my dad pipes up and says, Baba is already married. Baba says, what's he saying? You're already married? I said, Baba is a little crack. You know, the conversation with Baba was always in Gujarati. And in Gujarati, crack means he's crazy. I said, Baba is a little crazy. And as soon as I said that, Baba became very serious. He said, is this how you refer to your father in front of other people? There were other people in the room also. Is this how you respect him? Is this what you say about him when you go outside? I said, no, Baba. I said, only here, Baba, in front of you. He says, only here. I said, yes, Baba, only here. So he turns to my dad and says, he doesn't go around talking like this about you outside, does he? My dad said, he dare not, Baba. Dad was quite strict. Then Baba turns to me again and he confirms. He says, only here. I said, yes, Baba, only in front of you. Now, Baba would tell us that in front of me, in my darbar, in my court, you can say anything about anybody, your mother, your father, your grandparents, your kids, your brothers, sisters. You can say whatever you like about that. So that's why I said it. I wouldn't say that about my dad otherwise. So Baba said, okay. And then his seriousness disappeared. His demeanor became normal again. So he says, what's he talking about? You're married. So mom now pipes up and says, Baba, when you were a child, uh, uh, excuse me, when you were a child, when Merwan was a child, you said some things about him. So we wanted him not to get married so that he's single. If you want him for your service and stuff like that, he would have no ties or it's very easy for him to come. So Baba said, he looks at me and says, don't listen to them. Don't listen to them. If you want to get married, you get married. So that was the end of it. You know, when Baba tells you something like that, you just accept it and it's finished and you don't think about it, not even afterwards. But years and years, decades later, when I started first preparing for talks like this, and I was writing these points, the thought came to me, two things about this. First, Baba said, don't listen to your parents. That is most unusual. Normally, it would be the other way around. Normally, Baba would say, you must listen to your parents. You must respect them. You must do what they want. And not only to kids, but also to adults for their older parents. In fact, I'll just take an aside for a minute. And in one case, one of his mandli had went home to visit his mother, and Baba said, remember, you do whatever your mother says. And his mother asked him to get married. So the poor fellow had to get married because Baba had told him to do what his mother wanted. When he came back, he tells Baba, I'm married. Baba says, what? So he says, Baba, you told me to follow what my mother said. She wanted me to get married. That much. He was very particular about, but in this case, he said, don't listen to them. And the second thing was that if Baba hadn't said that, it struck me that when I wanted to get married and I would go to my parents, we would probably have a big argument, big fight. They would say no, I would say no, I want to, and back and forth. But in one fell swoop like this, he just finished all that off uh, with this little incident. So the first time I met Baba was in 1948. As you heard, I was in December. It was actually 31st December, easy date to remember, 1948. We met Baba. There was a small group of us from Karachi who were there to see Baba. And, my parents, myself, Mummy, Minu Karas, and maybe a couple of others too. And Baba had agreed to see us just give us darshan for a short time. And it was in the trust of what is today the trust office. In those days, it was known as Khushru quarters. And those of you who have been there, Bhauji used to sit in the corner office. That was Adike Irani's office initially. Next to that office, there are two large rooms, which today are used by the accounts group. In those two rooms, Baba used to use as rooms to greet and meet people. And in one of those rooms, I'm told, is where I met Baba. So we were waiting outside, and Baba first called Minu in, talked to him. And then he asked Minu to go and bring me to him. So Minu came out, took me from my parents and put me in Baba's lap. And they say, Baba played with me for a few minutes and then put me on the floor. And I was crawling around. And when my parents were called in. So I must have crawled and gone to the back of the room, and I was sitting there. And all of a sudden I said, Baba. And that got Baba's attention. So he looked up and he points to me and he says, out of the many on the waiting list, I have selected him. And that meeting, it was a short meeting. I don't know exactly how long we were there, but I guess it might have been tops for an hour or hour and a half. It was a short meeting, but the first time I saw him, of course, all this is hearsay. I don't remember anything. Next time I saw him, second time, was in 1952, a rather unusual meeting at Karachi airport. Now in 1952, Baba had come to the West and he had his accident in America, in the US, and he was on his way back. He had recuperated in Myrtle Beach, I think in New York, and in Europe also. He spent a few weeks recovering, but now he was on his way back to India. And he wanted to get to Bombay urgently. But a day or two before his departure, the airline he was going to use, their staff went on a wildcat strike. So all his travel plans were disrupted. But he wanted to get back to Bombay in a rush. So they booked tickets for him as far as they could, and they could only get tickets up to Karachi. From Karachi to Bombay, he didn't have a ticket. So Baba decided he would come. So Minu got a cable that Baba is coming. You meet him at the airport, make arrangements for him, and come alone. So Minu tells the rest of the Baba group in Karachi that Baba's coming, but I can't take any of you because Baba said, come alone. But Minu knew Baba's ways. So he said, remember, at any split moment, Baba could say, well, let the group come and take my darshan. So you be ready. Be ready, because at any time he could call you. And then he turns to my dad and he says, why don't you come with me also to the airport? I can't take you to see Baba because he said come alone, but you wait outside, because sometimes especially if Baba's going to be there a while. If there's some work to be done, some running around to be done, you can do it. But I can't take you to see Baba. You'll have to wait outside. So Dad readily agreed. He said, fine, I'll come with you. So the two of them go to meet Baba at the airport. Baba, his foot is in a cast because he'd had his accident. He can't walk, so he's taken out of the plane in a wheelchair. And they wheel him into the airport on a wheelchair. Minu had rented a lounge. They had lounges in those days which you could actually reserve. So he'd reserved a lounge for Baba and his mandli so that they had some privacy because we didn't know how long they were going to be there. So Minu goes and of course he meets them because he was supposed to go alone. And then once they get to the lounge and settle in a bit, Baba's talking to Minu and says, so everything okay with you, this, that, how's your family? The usual things that Baba asks when you first meet him. And then just to catch him out, he says, you came alone, didn't you? Because he said, come alone. Minu said, no, Baba, I brought Adi Dubash with me. Baba said, why? I asked you to come alone. So he said, Baba, I thought we don't know how long you're going to be at the airport here. If there's some work to be done, some running around to be done, he'll be useful, Baba. So that's why I brought him. So Baba says, where is he? So Baba is waiting outside over there. So Baba says, call him. So of course, Dad goes in and Dad gets to be with Baba also. Now, with Baba were 5 women. Meramani, Gawer, Rano, and Meru. These were the 5 people with Baba. So there were 6 of them. Now they're talking about getting a ticket to go to Bombay because Baba wanted to go urgently. So Minu turns to Baba and says, Baba, this Adi Dubashi, he works in shipping. So maybe he can get a ticket for you. I don't know what connection shipping has with getting an airline ticket, but Minu said that. And Baba said, okay, you go. He says, I must get to Bombay on the next available flight. So Dad goes. There was a counter in the airport those days where you actually book tickets. Of course, everything was manual in those days. So he goes to the counter, asks the clerk. The fellow opens up all his books and everything where the reservations are, goes through it, and he says, sorry, sir, everything is booked. There's not even one seat. So Dad goes up and tells Baba. Baba says, no, that's no good. You go try again. So he goes again. And the clerk looks at me, sir, you just came a few minutes back. Please. My elder brother, he's got urgently got to. Baba would be known as his elder brother when he was traveling in public, right? He didn't want to be known as Meher Baba. So the guy looks, he says, there's one seat. One seat. So Dad goes up and tells Baba. Baba says, what am I going to do with one seat? Baba says, I need at least 4 seats. 4. He wanted Mera, Mani, and Gawer to accompany him. So the 4 of them. And he said, Rano and Meru, they can follow in whatever flight is available after that. But 4 seats I must get. I have to be in Bombay urgently. So Dad goes again. This time the clerk is even a little more, now he's getting rude. Says, sir, what do you think? I can make tickets myself? This, that, and the other. He's giving Dad firing. So Dad somehow cajoles him, whatever. And he looks and he says, there are 2 tickets now, sir. Dad goes back, but of course, Baba says, that's no good. 4. I must get 4. He says, go again. By now, my dad was all, they didn't know quite what to do. He wasn't familiar with Baba's ways, right? So now he went down, but he didn't go to the clerk. He's standing in the corner in the clerk's office thinking now, what should I do? What should I do? And meanwhile, the clerk looks up from the work he was doing and he sees my dad standing in the corner. He says, not you again, sir. And this and that. But somehow my dad begged and pleaded and whatever he did, he got him to look again. the guy looks and he says, "Sir, I now have 4 seats." So dad rushes up the stairs and Baba's happy. So he gets his 4 seats to go to Bombay. Now, there's also a story behind why Baba wanted to get to Bombay urgently, and maybe afterwards, if I do have some time, I might remember to tell you. There was a reason why he wanted to get to Bombay urgently. So Baba leaves. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, Baba did say, "Okay, let the Baba group come and have my darshan." So, of course, we were all ready waiting because Minu had told us, "Be ready." And we were. So we all rushed to the airport and we spent a few hours with Baba there taking us. It was the first time my younger brother, Homi, who a few years later died in a domestic accident, met Baba also. So we had his darshan at the airport for a couple of hours. Now, through all this, after Baba left, Minu says, I noticed something that Baba never ever put his foot on Pakistan soil. He was always on the wheelchair. They even carried him out of the plane in a wheelchair. I don't know what that means, but Minu noticed things like that. In the old days, before the partition of India into Pakistan and India, Baba would visit parts of that part of India, which is now Pakistan, regularly. He would go to Karachi, Lahore, Quetta, where Gavera and a family were. He visited that so many times. Karachi, he must have visited 3, 4 times. He had relatives there and many other places. And his must stores, he went over there too. But ever since the partition of the country and the formation of Pakistan, this was the first and only time he visited. And Minu noticed that he never put his foot on Pakistan soil. What that means, only Baba knows. But it was an interesting observation. Another interesting thing happened in 1952. Irach and Pendu came to Karachi for a few days visit. I'll tell you the story behind that. In 1952, before Baba went to the West, he asked Iraj to accompany him. Of course, it was only natural. But Iraj says that he was so exhausted after the new life and after the Manonash phase of Baba that he told Baba, "Baba, you have to forgive me. I can't come with you because I won't be able to serve you the way you need to be served. I just won't be able to do it." And Baba said, "No, no, what are you talking about? You must come with me." And Iraj kept saying no. And for some reason, Iraj kept resisting. Baba and Iraj would go back and forth on this for days. And Iraj insisted no, he couldn't do it. So eventually, one day, Baba got really angry at Iraj and he says, "What's the point of you staying with me? If you can't do what I ask you to do, you should leave." I mean, he didn't tell him to leave, but in the conversation, that's what he said. So Iraj said that started playing on his mind. And then he started thinking that, Baba's right. If I can't do what he wants, then I should leave. So now he says he's planning how he's going to leave. He's planning what he should take with him. And when he's thinking about that, he says, there is nothing that belongs to me that I can take. My toothbrush, my hairbrush, my clothes, my undershirt, my underwear, everything was given to me by Baba. He says, nothing is mine, so I can't take anything. So he says he was making plans. He thought that the only way I could leave would be in the middle of the night, in the darkness, under cover of darkness, because I would have to leave naked. I couldn't take anything with me. Nothing would belong to me. See, he said he was thinking this. The next day, in the morning, one of the Mandli knocks on his door and says, "Baba wants to see you." So he goes. Baba says, "Okay, I agree that for you that you don't come with me, but instead you have to do me a favor." So he said, "Okay." He says, "I want you and Pendu to go visit a number of towns and cities in India and Pakistan and give talks about me." So he said, "All right." Now, one of the cities that Baba had selected was Karachi. So Erach and Pendu turned up there. Erach stayed at our place. We didn't have big houses or anything like that. Erach stayed at our place and Pendu stayed at Minu's place. And that was the first time I sort of had close contact with Erach. And ever since then, he's been my favorite. And but Erach would say that with hindsight, at the end of the tours that Baba had asked them to do, he said we were so exhausted that with hindsight, it would have been better if I'd gone with Baba to the West. He should have known that, but for some reason, Baba didn't want him to go. Iraj also said that the greatest regret of his life was he was not with Baba when he had his accident in the US. That was his greatest regret, he said, he would say. Now, there's a funny little story about when Iraj and Pendu were in Karachi. Of course, I was only in 52. I was only 5 years old, so I didn't go to the talks or anything like that. But they had a free evening. So my dad said, well, they just wanted to take it easy. So my dad said, we'll go to the local boat club where he was a member. And if you want, I can take you on the water in a boat, just have a nice row in the fresh air and everything. Uh, so they said, yes, that was a good idea. So they went. We were also there. We were sitting having snacks and tea while they were gone for this row. And my dad was a member, so he went and got the boat. He was in his swim trunks, which is his normal attire when he went rowing. Irach and Pendu were in their street clothes. They leave the dock, hardly go 30, 40 yards out into the water. And Pendu says, Adi, there's water coming here. So my dad leans over and looks and he says, it's like a small little fountain in the boat, water pouring in. And he said it was coming in so fast that before I could do anything, we were in the water, all three of us. Iraj could manage to stay afloat, but Pendu was having trouble. But Pendu was asthmatic, so he was having trouble. So my dad, using his presence of mind, turned the boat over, and all three of them hung onto the boat. Meanwhile, of course, on the shore, they saw what had happened, so help was on its way. Now, Iraj and Pendu were carrying all their travel documents in their pocket. So that was all floating in the water. In those days, you didn't have passports in the early days. They had a letter which allowed them to travel cross-border from India to Pakistan. And it was actually written in ink. It wasn't typed, written in ink. So they were really concerned that, my God, now what's going to happen to our travel documents? If it smudges and it can't be read, will we be able to go back to India? So they, cut a long story short, everything was salvaged from the water and dried. And when it dried out, they say not one word on those documents was smudged. It was absolutely crystal clear, remained crystal clear. So that was a little story. They left. The next day, Dad goes to the boat club and he goes into the workshop. Or not the next day, 2 days later, Dad goes into the workshop and he sees the manager and said, what happened to that boat the other day that I was in, which sank? So he says, sir, we couldn't find anything. What do you mean you couldn't find anything? He said, there was water coming in like a little fountain. I saw it with my own eyes, he says. He says, sir, we did this, we did that, we tested it, everything. He said, no, come on. I want to see the boat. Show me the boat. So he says, so the boat is not here? He says, where is it? He says, sir, it's out on the water being used. So for some reason, Baba wanted Irach and Pendu to have a little dip in the water of Karachi. And in future years, when Baba would refer to that incident, he would sort of tell somebody, this fellow, this handsome looking fellow is Adi Dubash. He was the fellow who tried to drown Irach and Pendu in Karachi. Tell him the story, then Baba would tell him. So that was 1952. What time is it? Oh, I have some time. I have till 12 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
I'll stop a few minutes early in case people want to ask questions, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So that was 1952. Next time I saw Baba was 1954 at the Mass Darshan program in Wadia Park in Ahmednagar.
Merwan,
That was,
could you adjust your screen?
oh,
We're only
yeah,
seeing half of
sorry, my
it.
screen keeps lowering itself for some reason. I guess the laptop's getting old like me. Um, Yeah, and that reputedly at that darshan program, some people say as many as 100,000 people came to see Baba. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But certainly tens of thousands of people there. It was just a mess of humanity. I was only 7, so I only remember a couple of things, and there are a couple of stories that my parents told me. What I remember is that Baba would be giving prasad. There were so many people there that, excuse me, as usual, there was a small dais, and in dais there was a chair where Baba would sit, and people would bow down to him, and he would give prasad. But then I think Baba got tired of that, so he actually came off the chair and sat on the dais itself, and with 2 hands, he had a basket of prasad on either hand. With 2 hands, with one hand like this, he would be giving prasad one after the other. That was so fast. And somehow I had found myself at the back of Baba's dais. The prasad was gram, what we call chana, sugar coated in a white sugar coating, which I loved as a kid. And while I was there, there's these dozens and dozens of baskets of prasad in the back over there, back of Baba's dais, because there were so many people. And I'm looking at this and going, wow, look at that. As I say, I loved it. So I looked around, I sort of saw nobody was looking, so I took a bit. I must have done it 2 or 3 times. So I sneaked Baba's prasad, I stole it. And I'm sure if I wasn't 7 years old, Baba would have somehow or the other brought this to my attention and given me a firing. But because I was only 7, he let me off. The other thing I remember myself is that Baba, when he left, Baba came in Adi Senior's car, which was a big blue Chevrolet, massive, big car. In fact, I think the body of it is still preserved in Mehrabad in one of the hostels in Lower Mehrabad. That's the body of it. But when he left in the same car, but he didn't sit in it. He sat on top on the roof. You may have seen it in the film of the Wadia Paktash, and he sat on top of the car on the roof, and he left. And we later found out that the reason Baba sat on the top was because there were thousands of people there who still hadn't had a chance to take his darshan. So Baba wanted to make sure that everybody who came there at least had a good, clear view of him. So that's why he got on the top of the car when he left. Now, the stories that were told to me by my parents, a couple were these, that at the darshan program, Baba had asked for, I think, 100 or 200 poor people to be brought there so that he could wash their feet, give them prasad, and they would also be served food. Now, when Baba washes the feet, the prasad is not just the sweet or the candy or that we get at the samadhi. It could be a sack of grain, it could be rice, it could be a blanket, money, or a combination of these. So he would give prasad like that to them. So they were seated in a separate area because they were going to be served food and everything else. And while the program was going on, Baba was giving darshan with both hands very furiously. One of the mandi comes and whispers in his ears, and Baba stops the program. And he walks over to where the poor people are sitting. And apparently the poor had been served their food, but they said, how can we eat when the person, our host, especially a spiritual person like that, has not eaten? He must eat first before we can eat, which is a very common practice in India, especially with spiritual people. They want them to take the first bite before they can eat. So Baba acknowledged that, and he took a little something to eat. And then the poor people ate their food. Now, September is a very, very hot month in Nagar. And again, there was a small group of us from Karachi, the four of us, my brother, myself, mom, dad, my grandmother, Minu, and probably 3 or 4 others from Karachi or more. And towards the afternoon, we were all getting extremely thirsty. There's no water bottles or anything like that in those days. Nothing like that. So we're looking around here and there for water. Couldn't find anything. Finally, we asked one of the mandli. He says, is there any drinking water here? They were all so thirsty. So he said, why don't you go a little behind Baba's chair and turn, and there might be some water there. So sure enough, we go there, and there's a bucket of water, small bucket of water. So everybody looks at the water. Somebody says, this water is not very clear. It's quite murky. It doesn't look like drinking water. But Minu Kharas, who was sort of our so-called local Ahmednagar expert, because he'd been to Nagar quite a few times, he said, no, no, no. He said, Nagar water is always like this. It's never clear. It's murky, this, that. I guess we must have been so thirsty, so we drank it up. Hardly had we drunk the water. Within seconds, one of the men Manli turns up. I can't remember who now. And he's looking around and he's looking around and he says, there was a bucket of water here. Did you see it? So we said, yes. So he said, where is it? He said, well, this bucket, it had water in it. So he said, what happened? So he said, we drank it up. He said, oh, no, no, no. He said, oh, he kept holding his head and saying, oh, no, no, no. Baba's not going to like this at all. Baba's not going to. What's the matter? There was water there. We drank it up. Why isn't Baba going to like this? He says, you don't understand. He says, when Baba washed the feet of the poor, he asked us to collect the water that he'd washed their feet with and to keep it. And this was the water that Baba had washed the feet of the poor with. And then he held his hands in his head in his hands and he went away. And my mom said, we were all standing there thunderstruck now. We just drank the water that Baba had used to wash the feet of the poor. Just imagine. Today, even the poor in India wear slippers or chappals or whatever. In those days, they walked bare feet. So just imagine how dirty their feet would have been. And that was the water we drank. And my mother said we were all thinking about what's going to happen next. But believe it or not, even the kids, even we drank it all. Not one of us even got an upset stomach. Not even an upset stomach. Shall I open it to questions or shall I go on? Prakash?
Yeah, maybe 5 more minutes and maybe one more story, and then we can have people ask questions.
Okay. Actually, the next story will be 5 minutes. That works out fine. So that was 1954 with Baba. And in 1958, Baba was having his Sawas program at Mirabad. This was the one and only mixed Sawas with men and women. And my parents were going to go to it. And when the circular for the Sawas came out, it said that children under 17 or 18 weren't allowed. So I wasn't too pleased with that. I was upset that I won't get to see Baba and this and that. And I'm sure with a little encouragement from my parents, I wrote a letter to Baba saying, Baba, can I come to the Savas and be with my mommy and daddy and this and that? And we get a response. And in the response, of course, written by Erach, I'll quote only a small bit of it. The letter says, after saying how happy Baba is to receive my letter and he loves me and he loves all children and this and that, Erach says, quote, you must not feel sad if you are not allowed to be with your mommy and daddy for the Mirabad Savas. So even a 10-year-old like me figured that that's it, can't go. So that was the end of it. But then when mom and dad went for the Savas, I went with them also. And initially, we would stop in Bombay before they went to Nagar. My dad was going as a volunteer, so he was going early to the Savas. And mom and I were going to go to Panchgani. Mom had cousins in Panchgani who owned boarding schools. Panchgani is very famous for its boarding schools, even today. And one of the schools was run by mom's cousins. So we were going to spend time with them. So while we were in Bombay, one day at 8 o'clock in the morning, phone rings and our host picks it up and said, Adi, it's for you. It was one of the Mandli. And he says, Adi, Baba says he would like to meet Merwan. Is that possible? So Adi says, of course it's possible. Thinking that, and then Baba will call him in the next day or two. So Adi says, when does Baba want to see him? He says, at 10 o'clock. It's already 8, right? So, of course, Dad wasn't going to say no anyway. So he's okay. So then we rushed, got ready and everything. And Baba was staying at Arnavas in Nariman's house at that time in Bombay. And they lived on the second floor. And the stairs to their house was from outside only. So we got there. And when we got there, Bhau was waiting at the bottom of the stairs. He said, come on, Baba's waiting for you. So all three of us follow Bhau up the stairs, and Bhau suddenly turns and he points to my parents. And he says, no, not you two. Baba only wants to see Merwan alone. You two stay here. So they were asked to stand at the bottom of the stairs and he took me up. So I went. I was only 10. I went and Baba was sitting in the sitting room, the living room as we call it, in a sofa. He was in his shorts. It was the first and only time I saw him with his hair open. I honestly don't remember what Baba talked to me about, but he must, being 10, he must have just asked me some normal questions like, how are you and this and that, and how's mommy and daddy. And I was literally with him for 5 or 10 minutes. It's the shortest meeting I've ever had with him. And then he said, now leave. So I left. Now, again, many, many years later, when I'm writing these things down, I thought to myself, did Baba call me for that little meeting because I wrote the letter to him or not? Only he knows. I don't know whether there's any connection between the letter or not. And anyway, so then we went to Panchgani, and shortly after, hardly had we got there, and in a day, mom was called to Mehrabad to be a volunteer also. So she left me there and went away. But I was very happy in Panchgani at the boarding school with all the kids and this and that. So that was a very nice, if you like, holiday for me after having seen Baba, although it was a very short visit with him. Okay. My next talk will be Guru Prasad visit, which will take a while because we had 3 long visits with Baba and Guru Prasad in 60, 63, and 65 of about 6 weeks each. So this is probably a good point to stop.
Yeah, you're all blessed. So fortunate. So yeah, I mean, anybody questions? Yeah. So one of the things I was about to ask you, I mean, which probably is not related to those things that you talked about, but generally, I mean, you're you were what you call a trustee, and what was it like being a trustee and handling all the affairs at the trust?
Uh,
But did you have to be there, or you could be in Canada and then
No,
manage?
no. I didn't live there while I was a trustee for about 6 years,
Okay.
but I lived in Canada. But
Oh,
I would attend all the board meetings, even though the board meeting was at like midnight our time here.
okay. Okay.
I would get up and attend meetings, and if there were other meetings, I've now become so used to attending these meetings in the middle of the night, whether it be midnight or 2 in the morning or 3 in the morning or 5 in the morning. But so I could attend all that. But when you say what was it like being a trustee, I mean, it was quite a, special thing to be Baba's trustee.
Right.
But
And
mainly our focus was the trust.
okay. And so because I believe people are given different aspects of the trust things to
I
look at.
looked after, because I'm a CPA,
Okay.
I looked after the finances of the trust.
Oh, there you are.
I still look after it, even though I'm not a trustee.
Okay.
I still look after it from here.
Beautiful.
So right now we're in the middle of preparing our annual audited accounts, because March is the trust year end, right? So
Yeah.
right now we're in the process of doing that.
So anybody, any thoughts? I mean,
I
and that,
also was the planning manager, by the way.
oh,
I still am the planning manager.
what would that
We
entail?
prepared the master plan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember you giving a talk along with Daniel at
Yeah.
different places. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd gone all over the Baba centers. We'd gone to the States, we went to Australia, UK, and we went to 3 or 4 locations in India also: Delhi, Hyderabad, Amravati,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mumbai, Bombay, places like that, to give
And,
these
and
talks.
and if I may ask, and I mean, has it taken some shape in some way? I mean, well, I don't know. I'm just asking.
Nothing major has been done that's in the plan, but certainly the smaller items in the plan, some of them are being tackled right now.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, but nothing major right now. Right now, because of this FCRA, there is no capacity to take on anything major.
Oh, okay.
You know, right now they have they've put out the request for plans for the superstructure, right?
Yes, yes,
Now,
that's right.
whether, and I think the deadline for that is the end of this year,
Oh,
December 31st, 25. And whether after that they proceed with construction or not, I don't know. They've said that there's no guarantee they'll proceed, but I don't know what the trust plans of after that.
okay. And the next thing I was thinking of as you were talking, the name Rhoda always means Huma Ghazals, and that's how it just happens, because she used to sing pretty well, right? Your mom.
My
Uh,
mom?
yeah,
You
I
must be
thought
no. I know you're thinking of
Rhoda
Rhoda
Mystery.
Mystery. You're
Oh, okay,
thinking of
okay.
Rhoda
Sorry,
Yeah.
Mystery,
sorry.
right?
Okay, okay, okay. Not Rhoda the Bosch.
Right, Mom.
Okay.
No, Mom didn't sing well at all. You wouldn't want to be in the room when Mom sang.
Merwan, thank you for sharing such wonderful, wonderful personal stories.
Oh, you're
Uh,
welcome, Mom.
and you may recall that we met there at your desk in the trust compound there. Um,
Yeah.
I think it was in 22, and I was doing some printing of some of the songs that were being downloaded by Baba through me in the back there. Your
Yeah,
desk
that's where I
is
sit.
right, right. Your desk is on the right,
Yeah,
and the doorway to the back room is
right,
to the left there, and
right.
we talked very briefly, but uh, it's great to see you again, and
Yeah.
to and I didn't realize that you'd been in Toronto for all these years. Um,
Yes, long time.
yeah, I had visited Toronto in 1970 on a couple of different occasions, and I guess that was a little bit before your time
Yeah,
there.
a little bit. We got here in 74.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, uh, yeah.
That's a while. Yeah, and something popped into my head. But anyway, I mean, anybody else, like Betty and Diana are there? Diana wants to ask. Okay, go ahead, Diana.
Ron, you didn't talk, or I hope I didn't miss it, about your wife, Ruby. How she or maybe that's coming later. How she was she a Baba lover when you met her, and how she came to Baba, or um, so I was
There's a little bit to tell, not much, but because it was a very gadrup, she wasn't a Baba lover to start with, but she knew all about Baba when she met me. We had also been going, I guess, together for 6 or 7 years before we got married. So yeah,
yeah.
but maybe
Oh,
I'll talk a little bit about it afterwards.
Yeah.
thank you.
Diana.
Uh,
I had something that I'd like to mention, Merwan. I just want to make sure I've got this clear. Was it so we were, when I was in India a long time ago, we went to visit Sakari and Shirdi. And was that with Minu Karas? That was he the one who would take people there?
No, that was with the
Minu
other Minu.
Barucha.
Minu Barucha.
It was Minu. Okay. Anyway, I was just wondering if that was something that was significant for this story. But what I wanted to say is that when we came back from that trip, it's a very long day. And then as I was walking back to the Pilgrim Center after getting out of I guess, a little minibus that we had taken because we were a small group, your father was walking past for some reason. And I just, we greeted each other and I told him where I had been. And he said something really interesting. He said that he never went to those places. Once he was with Baba, it was only Baba for him, and there was no interest in any other person to go see. And I was wondering if you would like to say something about that.
Well, I actually have the same feeling myself. I did end up going to Shirdi because while we were preparing the master plan, we went to Shirdi to talk to them about their experiences, about what happened at Shirdi, just so that we could get some tips from them. So that's why I went to Shirdi. We didn't go. I didn't go as a pilgrimage, and really, I don't have the desire to go to these other. If I happen to be there, of course, I take the darshan there. But I have no specific desire to go as such. I mean, I've I've been to Pune so many times, and I walked past Babasan's Dargah so many times at that place because that's where we normally stayed in Pune, around that area. But I've never been inside. I never had the urge to go inside for some reason.
Is it because Baba told you about? I mean,
No, later
your
we
own.
found out that that's what Baba said, but Baba also said it's okay to go and visit the samadhis of his perfect masters,
Yeah.
but somehow the urge just wasn't there.
Yeah.
In the 60s, when we went to visit Baba at Guru Prasad, I said we stayed there. We had 3 visits of 6 weeks each. We were very close to Baba Jan's Dargah. In fact, I must have passed it dozens of times walking back and forth in that part of the city because we lived there in that area with our friends. But never, as I say, neither me or my parents had the urge to go inside and take darshan.
Wow.
I was very just impressed by Adi's one-pointed focus on Baba as he expressed it to me that time.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. In fact, they came from Pakistan, right? And India and Pakistan have never had good relations, as you just saw what happened in the last few days. And once they came to Mirabad and settled there, they never went back to Pakistan, not because they didn't want to, but because they were afraid that if they did, it could somehow impact their coming back into India. So they never ever went back. And that was for almost 20 years.
When did they leave? When did they
I
leave
I
Pakistan?
think they left in 82,
Okay.
1982.
Ready? Go ahead.
Okay. Marijuana, I know it's close to closing time, but maybe the one story about your family that uh, uh, that always stands out in my mind is the death of your brother.
Right.
I've heard your mother tell it. It's this we're so close to the end. Maybe it's something you could address next time. It's profound. It's a profound story, and I don't remember how old you said you were when, but you were just a child, I think.
I was 7,
Mm, mhm.
Older
7.
brother?
Younger brother.
Younger.
Right.
Oh, so yeah, that's right.
He
Makes sense.
was 4.
Yeah.
I was 7 when he died.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I just it was on my mind. I got to know whether bring it up
Yeah, no, I can tell that story later. Yep.
Mhm. Okay.
So, I mean,
You've
we have only 3 minutes left. Uh, Continue. Sorry, sorry to stop you in the middle. I mean,
no,
you
no,
have.
I
Yeah.
wasn't saying anything,
No,
Prakash.
I
I'm
mean,
okay.
now that Baba is not physically with us, everybody gets asked this question. For all I know, how how do you keep him with you? What is anything special that comes to your mind regarding that?
There's nothing special. The only thing, what I have now over the years come down to is remembering him, taking his name.
Hmm.
You know, Baba, you've probably heard this, that Baba said that my name is very, very powerful.
Yeah.
And Merwan Jasawala, Irach's brother,
Right.
would tell me that, Baba once told him that my name is so powerful. He says that sometimes even I take it myself.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. I remember him as much as I can throughout the day.
Yeah.
How it started, I'll tell you, in the time of the 3 incredible weeks, in 54, when the Westerners were there, Baba told them that if you remember me just before you drop your body, before you die, you will come to me. But he says, it's not easy to do that. But if you start now, maybe you can do it. And he said, how should you do it? He said, take my name first thing in the morning when you get up. Remember me for a few seconds. 12 noon, 5 p.m. Again, remember me. And then just last, before going to bed, remember me. And he says, if you do that, you will remember to take my name just before you pass away. Now, my parents, actually, my mom and dad started doing it. And of course, I, being the kid, picked up the same habit. And now my wife Ruby and I do it. But what happens is when you do that is, you think of him at the most odd time of the day. You look at your watch and say, is it 12 o'clock? And no, it's only 11. So you remember him so many multiple times. And that just over time, it just, you keep remembering him on and on and on and on. That's how it started.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That's so there's nothing special. I just remember him as much as I can, take his name.
Is that what Baba called Sahaj Dhyan or something?
I don't know. I'm not into all that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but beautiful.
So,
This has been so
but
beautiful. Yeah.
that's when I think when you do it exclusively, you sit and sort of meditate. I don't meditate. I just try to take his name,
Yeah. As often as you can.
yeah, just in the normal course of the day. When I go for a walk, when I do this, when I do that,
Yeah.
anytime.
Yep. Wow. So we'll have more opportunities to ask you questions, I'm sure, as
Yeah,
you keep
sure.
sharing stories
Yep,
on the next few Mondays
certainly.
to come. Yeah. So at this time, I guess, Betty, we can say Jai Baba and then call it off for today, right? Yeah. So
Yes.
let's all say, take Baba's name 3 times with you there as well.
Okay.
Avatar,
Avatar Meher Baba
Meher
Ki
Baba
Jai.
Ki Jai.
Avatar.
Meher
Meher Baba
Ki
Ki
Jai.
Jai.
Avatar
Avatar.
Meher
Baba Ki
Jai.
Jai.
So beautiful.
Thank you,
Glad to see
Merwan.
Okay.
Madeline
Jai
here.
Baba, everybody.
Good.
Dhanyavad.
Thanks,
Baba.
Merwan.
Thank you.
Thanks
Much
a lot.
love.
Thanks a
Oh,
lot, and we'll see you again. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
hey, Baba. You gonna stop the recording, Prakash?
Yes, I will.
Wow,
Wow.
this is so special. Thank you, Merwan.